Who's come today for our AWE Australian White Ensign flag raising ceremony. I'd like to thank Admiral Barrett for giving up some time to be with us today. The Mayor of Woollahra Council and other dignitaries are here today, and our members. Thanks for turning up. I'd like to now hand over to Max Keane to give a brief history of RANSA and where we've come from and why we're here today. Max?
Thank you.
Did I hear three?
But admirals, all captains, commodores, admirals, we're all admirals when we get on the water.
Oh yeah.
I was a sea cadet, and in 1953 started sailing from here, Rushcutters Bay, from TS Sydney and TS Australia, which was at the Boom Defence Depot in Waven. There were 8 whalers in the trots here between the jetties, and the dinghies, the island class RNSA dinghies, were kept over in on a pontoon in the southeast pound at GI. Now, it was wonderful for us because we used to come down from Snapper Island and be towed down. There were usually 3 or 4 boats, whalers, to join up with the reserve whalers that used to sail from here. And that was 1953, and ever since then I've been part of this place. My soul is here. But I met, during those times, I met the most wonderful men that had come back from the war. I'm getting a bit emotional. They were survivors, a lot of them from Changi, from the HMAS Perth sinking, John Martin, and a lot of the senior officers weren't senior officers then, they were lieutenant commanders. They'd been through the war. They loved their sailing. We used to have a dozen whalers which would start every Saturday afternoon at lunchtime off the end of Garden Island, around Pinchgut, and then up the harbour. I was shaking. And it was such a wonderful thing for us young blokes. we would come up early from TS Sydney, and then we'd rig the whalers. There was a boatman here then, and that was a naval non-substantive break in here, who used to run the boats. All the officers would go up to the wardroom, have lunch, come back fiddly-eyed. Meanwhile, us boys, on coffee and biscuits, used to rig the boats for them. And on one occasion, I crewed for Sir John Collins here, and we had to lift him in and out of the boat so he didn't get his feet wet. There was a wonderful man, and he was a lieutenant commander or commander of that, John Robertson. And then there was so many other famous men. Our Commodore was Commander John Barth, HMAS Australia fame. If you've read the book, The Flagship, lately, it was a wonderful book. Who wrote this song? Mike Cull. Must read. It's a must read. Anyway, RANSA, the RNSA was formed about 1947, following Captain John Illingworth's deployment to Australia and the start of the Sydney to Hobart yacht race. So through the Naval Officers Club, they formed the RNSA Sydney Squadron. Now through that, you'll see on the Commodore's board some splendid, splendid men. I could go on forever and tell you stories about them. But they treated us cadets, our sea cadets, just like their own sons. They were just marvellous, and that's where we learned to sail. So by the age of 14, I had my whaler skipper's ticket. Started winning races, and I was trying to do ever since. Now, what happened in those days, I think we used to pay 1 6 to go in the race. So RANSA's always been a little bit born in the shadow of the bookkeeper. And we always made a little bit of money, and through our time here, the Navy was here first. Secondly, when the Navy left, it was doubtful whether we could stay here. There was a lot of politics. The Navy sort of clammed up and didn't say too much because there was a bit of politics going on. But we always kept saving money because one day we hoped that we would retain this lovely parkland and everything for our sailing fraternity. Well, it's come to pass. Now, we're not broke, and that's the biggest thing. And fortunately, when my tenure finished, we still didn't have a lease, as Commodore here. We still didn't have a lease, so we couldn't spend any money. So that was rather good. So now, with this wonderful congratulations to the current regime. We've established the lease, we've got money to spend, so carry on sailing.
Thanks, Max, much appreciated.
I think the Admiral was a cadet. I went down, I took my yacht to Creswell, and I had it down there for 3 years. Did you remember the Aquarelle or the Lower? When you had the, what year were you? 75, 76? Yeah, I was still there, yes. I had no lower then. I was always in trouble. I got the lowdown on you. Real trouble now. But we sailed the RANSA, there's lots to talk about, but we sailed down at Jervis Bay annually with the cadets, and it was just wonderful. And Jervis Bay Sailing Club was founded from that group, so it's good.
Brilliant. Thanks, Max. Now for Admiral Barrett. Thanks for coming.
Look, I normally start these official things by saying ladies and gentlemen, and it sounds very formal, but can I say friends, because that's how I actually feel. I would like to have had Jenny here as well, because she's been, in recent years, she's been part of the club, and she's enjoyed every moment of it. She's over in New Zealand at the moment doing some walking, so it's just me, I'm afraid. That's all you get. Look, I wanted to acknowledge what Max has just said, and I was going to point to 3 things, because we're here for a reason today, and that is we're going to raise the White Ensign. Now, the White Ensign is a significant issue for Navy. It's a significant part of our history, but it's actually a significant part of the nation's history. It's only 50 years since we have owned our own ensign, that this Navy has owned its own ensign. Prior to 1967, we used to fly the British ensign, and so we're often mistaken for warships or ships of another nation. And it was only 50 years ago that we made the statement that this needs to be ours and ours alone. So the ensign, the White Ensign, means a lot to the Royal Australian Navy. The second part of what I want to say is we've heard some history from Max, and my point of reflection, and the bit that I remember, is Lieutenant Commander Hinchcliffe, who had a particular role as a senior rehabilitation officer in this area at the time, whose sole job was to look after those who had returned from war, and sailing was seen as one of the best methods of rehabilitation. But it went beyond just health and care. It then went on to teaching education, and also an understanding of the rest of the people in the Navy that sailing is a great opportunity to teach teamwork, to teach self-discipline, reliance, and strengthen the characters of individuals. So the association with what sailing is to Navy is bound by a lot of history. And the last point I just wanted to make is my view was, drawing those last 2 things together, RANSA and the Navy have had such a great relationship at birth. Through the history itself, it is twisted and changed, but I would like, through actually now saying that RANSA should fly the White Ensign, to bring that all back together. And the very reasons are, we do have a history that's been born through a mutual desire to sail together, but the White Ensign represents the Navy, the nation's Navy. And I think sailing is a means by which I wish to encourage into the future more of our people to learn more about the sea, to recover where they may have been injured, but also to have a greater understanding of what it means to be part of the community and the nation. And I can think of no better way than actually doing it through RANSA. So what I did formally was write to the Commodore and say it would give me great pleasure if RANSA would fly the White Ensign. But I ask you to remember, this is the nation's flag. There is a respect that's due to that flag. But I have absolute faith, having had a lot of time spent here and watching what RANSA does, to know that it's in very good hands. And I hope that by doing this, we will all be able to encourage more people to take up this beautiful art of sailing, this beautiful opportunity to sail in the best surroundings that you will ever find in Sydney. And it gives me great honour in being able to bestow this and do this, but it also gives me great pleasure to know that it will be treated in exactly the right way because of our past history. Can I thank you for the opportunity to do this? Can I thank you for the invite? If you make it sound like you dragged me out of Canberra to come here to have a beer with friends to then present this thing, you're sadly mistaken. It's been a real pleasure to be here. So thank you. Please appreciate this means a lot to Navy, and also I hope it means a lot to RANSA. Thank you.
Thanks, Admiral. March on the ensign.
Sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, the White Ensign.
I call on Adrian Brusman to respond on behalf of RANSA.
Thanks, Dave. Vice Admiral Barrett, distinguished guests, sailors. Today is a historic day where we raise the right ensign over RANSA. We thank Admiral Barrett and the Navy for according RANSA the honour and privilege of wearing the white ensign at these facilities at Rushcutters Bay and on vessels owned by RANSA. That will be RANSA 1, our present committee vote. This in some formal way reconnects this historic site with the Navy. As many of you know, or all of you should know, this site was commissioned in about 1901 when Fort Bennelong was decommissioned and the buildings brought here, including the drill hall, and rebuilt on this site, and the cottage was built here, and the RANSA boat shed has been here since 1901. This now brings, with the raising of the white ensign over RANSA, the white ensign visible in all points of Sydney Harbour. The north at Bradley's Head, the east at HMAS Watson, the west at Garden Island, and now the south at Rushcutters Bay. And I thank you indeed for your very generous and kind words about RANSA. RANSA will do everything it can to fulfil its objects of encouraging sailing and cruising throughout the Navy and promoting the art of seamanship. And as everyone knows, we wouldn't have been in Australia if it weren't for the seamen of the 1770s and 1788s and thereafter. It's only in more recent times that people have come on ships without sailing, and even that is sailing. So thank you indeed, Admiral Barrett, and we look forward to a long and fortuitous future between RANSA and Navy. I'm now going to hand over to our Commodore. No, don't come here. I'm going to ask the Commodore to make a presentation to Admiral Barrett.
Little memento of the day.
Commodore Dave Giddings is presenting Admiral Barrett with the Commodore's flag of RANSA. Sorry, the Admiral's flag. Admiral's flag of RANSA.
I was a Commodore once.
Admiral Barrett is our highest ranked flag officer, and that's his flag, which you'll see flying from the position of prominence on the yard. Of course, the most prominent position is the gaff, and then the other flag officers' flags take different positions on the yard. So, congratulations, and thank you very much.
Before we wrap up, we've got some important people to thank that have made it a really good afternoon and excellent ceremony. And that's the ANC cadets who have given up their time today, and Able Seaman Wasimo for doing the bosun's call. Thank you for giving up your time and coming. Thank you very much. That wraps up. We'll have some refreshments on now. And mingle with Admiral Barrett. You need to be quick. He's got to be out of here by 1400, I'm told. So get in and catch up with him. Hey, where's our neighbour? Well, I forgot to mention neighbours before. Yeah, oh, here he is. John, isn't it? This man lives just across the road and did his national service here in 1956. And he's come today. Well done. Thank you.